Hello. Alright. So it's been a while since I made videos. I've been kind of trying to keep away from YouTube. I'm not replying to comments anymore in general. But I am still reading comments, and I finally decided to go ahead and make this video. This video is a direct response to several requests I've gotten, and that is on choosing a knife for self-defense as well as using one for self-defense. Surprisingly, a large amount of people have been asking about this, and that does actually surprise me. And it does kind of sound arrogant for me when I say it, because, hell, I am an arrogant jackass at times. I just thought that this would have been somewhat self-evident, but apparently it's not. And I think I know why, too, because I've experienced it myself. So let's get into the meat of the issue here. So, for folk who have asked about picking a knife for self-defense, and I think the latest one was Neil Lindman. I may be mispronouncing the username, I'm sorry. I'm going to try and be honest here, and I may say some things that might not be what you've been hoping to hear, but in a nutshell it's this: it doesn't matter. I've got two knives here, and when it comes to picking a knife for self-defense, it really does not matter what you pick. Quick side note, my hands right now are frozen. That's why I'm wearing all this stuff. I was out in the rain just now. I am frozen. My hands are numb. So if I start dropping this, this will be an issue to talk about. So, knives for self-defense, picking one. I see a lot of people, usually when people ask about picking a knife for self-defense, they'll mention a specific knife. For example, the recent comment asked, I think, about the Benchmade out-the-front blade Infidel. And people ask about daggers, push daggers, double-edged knives. So, the thing is, none of that really matters for purposes of self-defense. One knife is not better than the other, and it's very similar to firearms. If I pick up a Glock, SIG, H&K, 1911, for our purposes, they will function the exact same way. If they work and send bullets down range, everything else is down to personal preference. And it really is not possible to say that the H&K is better than the SIG for self-defense, and you should only get the H&K. They both work. And with knives, it's more or less the same. They all work. And it doesn't matter what the company is or what the blade design is. So let's get into the issue of how knives kill. There's generally two ways you go about using a knife to kill. And in self-defense, well, let's just get down to it. All death from knives stems from blood loss. And because we can't really get at the brain. We can't easily get at the spinal column. When we're talking about self-defense, it's just like guns. You want to stop the threat as fast as possible. And that's much harder to do with knives than it is with guns, because with guns, we can get right at the heart. We can get right at the aorta. Knives are very close range, and you don't have as much opportunity to get at specific target points as you would with a firearm. Because in self-defense, the only time you can use a knife is you're already in contact distance. You're already fighting, which means your hands are getting moved around, knocked away. So while you may be able to stab them easily and repeatedly, you may not be able to get at intended points. So we have two ways of attacking. Slashing at arteries, that's in the arm, in the leg, at the neck. And option two, stabbing, to get directly at the deeper arteries and vital targets. So given that all you're doing is pretty much stabbing and or cutting, as long as the knife has an edge and a point that can penetrate, it doesn't matter if I have a $300 out-the-front switchblade or a very, very cheap $20 piece of shit knife. The blade design is functionally identical. It has a point, it has an edge, it will cut, and it will stab. So picking a knife for self-defense is, I don't actually recommend getting push daggers, double-edged stilettos, switchblades, and pretty much knives are designed exactly for killing, because most knives are designed for utility, like this one. They're meant to cut food, boxes, utility function. Knives, like daggers, the reason they are considered more deadly, and the reason they're considered to be designed exclusively for killing, is when you have that kind of point design and two edges, how does that make it more effective for killing? It doesn't make it penetrate any easier. The issue is that when we're talking about knives like a dagger, they're designed to be stabbed, turned, and torn out to create as much damage as possible, which is why you have the second edge. And the other option is for military purposes, when you have a second edge, allowing you to get at the throat when you're doing sentry removal and so on and so forth, without having to twist the knife, as well as in situations when you get the knife in one position but you want to pull it back, you have that second edge to get there immediately without turning or moving your hand. None of that really matters for self-defense, because in issues of self-defense, your adrenaline's up, you're not thinking, all you're going to be doing is stab, 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 stab. You're not going to be trying to stab, twist, turn, rip out, and be Ninja McMahon. Which brings us on to the actual use of knives for self-defense, and this is a very important issue for me, and why I usually am wary about this subject. Knives for self-defense are very, very limited, and you have to understand the legality behind it. You cannot just carry a knife and think you're going to be fine for self-defense. There's very few times where you can use a knife in self-defense that is illegal, and not only illegal, but once you have it in a situation where it is illegal to use, its efficiency is very limited. You have to understand the use of lethal force in terms of the law, because otherwise you will go to prison. And I never like it when people say I'd rather be judged by 6 than carried by 12. Why? It's ignoring the basic fact that if you don't think about the legality, you will get yourself in prison. You need to be able to understand what you can use that is effective for self-defense without risking yourself for prison time, because the prosecution will do and say anything they can to make you out to be reckless, to make you out to be a bloodthirsty killer. There's countless case studies where the prosecution has said that the use of hollow point bullets shows that the person defending themselves was intent to commit murder, not self-defense. That's why when people modify their handguns to triggers that are very light, will also get murdered by the prosecution, which will point out, look, he modified his trigger, it's unsafe. They will bring out all these references, all these fake quotes. So when can you use lethal force in self-defense is only, generally speaking, when your life is verbatim, quote, when there is an imminent and immediate threat of death or grave bodily harm. What does imminent mean? What does immediate mean? This means that if a man shoots me and walks away, and an hour later comes back, unarmed, with his hands up like this, I can't shoot him. It doesn't matter that he just shot me. Take it to an extreme case, a man could shoot me, rape my daughter and kill her in front of me, beat my wife to death in front of me, and then start walking away. I can legally no longer shoot him in the back. The threat is no longer immediate and grave. He's walking away. That is an extreme case. So it will be up to the jury to determine whether the use of force was justified. And the standard they use is, would a reasonable person have felt that it was warranted? And the reasonable person is determined by the jury. So if a man is threatening me with his bare hands, screaming at me, being violent, threatening me, I can't pull out a knife. Because what I've done is just turned a threatening situation that a jury may have decided was nothing more than a fist fight and turned it into a situation involving lethal force. Now I am the aggressor, not him. It's no longer self-defense. I've provoked the situation to lethal force where it may not have been lethal force before. And there are case studies of that where a man shot another person who was threatening him barehanded, beating on his car, because the jury decided that he had used a pistol in response to what was supposed to be nothing more than a fist fight. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be just. It doesn't have to be morally correct. That's just the way the world works. So with knives, when can you pull out a knife? It's pretty much when you're faced with another knife or a gun. So that's very limited. I can't use a knife effectively against another knife or against a gun. Now, why should you always carry a knife? And why is a knife useful for self-defense? There's two reasons. Reason one is deterrent. If a man is threatening me with a knife and I have distance to pull out my own knife, I now have a deterrent that he's not going to be so willing to throw himself on, which gives me an opportunity to back away, disengage, and escape. The other issue is where knives shine, is when you are genuinely in a moment of self-defense, when you have not participated in the altercation, and you have not provoked the altercation. You're not fighting. You are genuinely trying to disengage and get away. In those situations, when you are being choked out from behind or on the ground having the shit beaten out of you, those are times when a knife can save your life and can be considered warranted. So if I get punched in the face, knocked to the ground, and I'm fucked, and there's a guy on top of me beating the shit out of me, and in that moment I believe he is trying to kill me, at that point a knife will frickin' save my life. If I'm being choked out from behind, a knife will save my life. And in those situations, the knife itself doesn't matter so much. If what matters is my ability to employ it, get it out, and use it. And here's the important thing to remember. When we're in those situations, when I'm in contact with the person trying to kill me, when I am being choked, my goal is not to try and kill him. It is try to get him the fuck off of me so that I can get the fuck away from him and run. Because once I stab him, once I cut his arm and he lets me go, and now we have distance, I have freed myself from his threat and I now have a lethal weapon and he doesn't, I cannot, under any circumstances, continue to engage unless he continues to engage. The second he's off of me, I need to go away. I cannot charge him and then stab him until he's dead. If I do that, I am no longer defending myself, I have just become the aggressor. So in those situations, we need a knife that can, one, cut, that has a good edge. Serrations are wonderful for this, because a dull edge is shit. I mean, look at this. I'm wearing this right now. I threw it on because I was cold. It's not going through at all, because this is a dull edge, and knives do dull with time, and not many people will take the time to constantly sharpen them. If I stab, look, I'm pushing with full force right now. I have this fleece on, and I have this heavy material on. I am pushing with full force with that edge. It's not going through, and I can't even feel it under. So that kind of shit does matter. So what we need, I mean, if I went full force like this and stabbed, it might go through. So what we need is a very good edge design and a handle that warrants use of good force. And it gets really complicated. It really does, with so many issues. Clothing, your positioning, where you are. One knife is really not going to be more effective than another in those situations. So it's hard for me to say what's good, what's not good. All I will say is pick a knife that has a slightly bigger blade. You want it to be able to reach vitals through ribs. You want the blade to be at least 4 inches, in my opinion, is good length, especially for legality. And it has to be able to cut, and you have to be able to hold on to it, and you have to be able to get it out of your pocket and deploy it with one hand easily and quickly. Like, some blade designs are not conducive to deploying with one hand because of the way the stud is. Pick a blade that is comfortable to hold on to in the pocket, to get out of the pocket and deploy fast as hell. Some knives that have the wave function, that when you whip them out of the pocket, are great. Switchblades are great. The issue is legality. Know the law in your state, know what's good, what's not good. Read case studies. Look up Masad Ayub, read case studies. And when it comes down to it, don't fall into the trap of thinking that there is one knife that is perfect for one thing, and if I get that one knife, I will be fine, because that's not as important as the situation you'll be in when you're using it. So pick a good knife that you will carry every day. Pick a knife that has utility, because if you get a little dagger that's useless for anything except stabbing, sooner or later you're going to stop carrying it. Get a good, light, comfortable knife that you will use every day, that will serve you good, and you will have it on you for self-defense should you ever need it. So don't worry so much about the knife itself in terms of self-defense as the knife you're going to be carrying day in, day out. Get a good steel, good handle, good price, and a knife will last you for decades, and you will be happy you had it, and should it ever save your life, it will. Good luck, and thank you for asking.